Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm BK. I'm the director of the Park Maintenance Institute, which is a project underneath the umbrella of the Pennsylvania Recreation and Park Society. So I have been brought on back in 2020 to focus holistically on maintenance operations and the nuts and bolts, if you will, much less the programming, much less the administration, except for planning and tools like that. But my main focus is how can we build the capacities of our municipalities? And that's not necessarily just within Pennsylvania. Originally, I did start, and our focus was going to be within the boundaries of the Commonwealth. Uh, but I started in January 2020. And if you kind of remember how 2020 went for us all, plans changed a lot. I believe that was the year of the pivot. And you probably got sick of hearing the word pivot and unprecedented. But anyways, here we are. So I started leaning more into the virtual aspect of the world. And we've started gaining some momentum by doing that, because we're finding that when it comes to land management, when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to sustainable operations, all of these terms are things that people are interested in, not only in parks and recreation, but in municipalities, in public works, in manufacturing. There's lots of different nuances that we have common interests and common challenges. And so what I've been trying to do is reach out to some of those folks that have best practices and are willing to share. And so that's kind of where we've been leaning with the Institute. The Institute is open to anyone. We're not just Parks and Recreation. We do have folks on the corporate side of things. We have planners that are interested in getting involved. We have municipal leadership that is interested and sees the value in what we're doing. And essentially what I'm trying to do is create a knowledge base. And starting out, it really wasn't much more than Googling, and begging, borrowing, and pleading off of whoever I could find. Finding good resources and sifting through the cat videos and the noise that is out there in the internet, and trying to pull things together that can serve our purposes, whether it be land management, whether it be sports turf, like I saw Ryan just jumped in the room here. And your expertise is your expertise, and how can we use your expertise and your energies to solve challenges and solutions for others in their operations. And so I'm trying to create a community of professionals that sometimes get overlooked, sometimes are underappreciated, or very much feel underappreciated. And so we want to be the advocates for the folks that take care of our communities. Our message, and what I've really been pushing in what we're trying to do, is that parks and public open spaces are essential assets of community infrastructure. They're not amenities. They're not things that are nice to have. They are a very important element of our community's health and wellness. And we saw that through the pandemic, and we're trying to keep that momentum and pivoting, if you will, into making that message louder and telling our stories a lot better. We see the programmers and the marketers and the administrative type folks, they're great at telling their stories, right? Well, some of the folks sitting on the mowers or sitting behind the scenes, they may not be the best storytellers, or at least the most appropriate storytellers, but they have stories too. And they're also essential elements of our infrastructure, because think, a lot of them hold that legacy knowledge that if it's not captured, if it's not recorded, and it's not saved, once they're gone, it's lost. So sometimes, especially when you're putting a shovel into the ground, you want to know there's no utilities underneath it. And if you're not sure, sometimes we need to figure out who does know those kind of things. And it's not always just a 811, right? So my purpose for today is to add value to your experience. You took some time out of your day to be here, so it's important for us to touch on the topics that you need to hear, but also I want to hear your successes. We as an industry, in my opinion, have we tend to be more on the negative. We're very problem solving, punch work order kind of mindsets. And so sometimes if we spin that a little bit and talk more about what we do well and celebrate the small successes, then they can become bigger elements and we feel more appreciated and people understand what we're actually doing for them. So that's kind of where I want to go with our overall focus. So I don't want this to be a bitch session, but it is, if you do have challenges, it is important for you to bring those out as well, because other people in this group may have solutions that you may not have thought of. So I have some topics here that I could bring up in a sense, but I also want to hear from you as we go. I'm going to start by first finding out, how did you find out about this? So I'm going to launch a poll here and just try to gain some aspect of, how did you find out about this session today? Quite a few folks coming in on NRPA. So that means my forum work is helping. Let's see. Some PRPS members, because I see Scoop. Institute went through, so our newsletter is doing, and LinkedIn. Well, that's good to see too, because I have been spending energy on that social media stuff. And if it's not getting through, I'm going to stop wasting that time in certain areas too, because God, is that kind of time consuming. Anyhow, thank you for that. This is great. So I would like to hear from some of you sitting here. I can see Lynn, I can see some other folks there, but you know, what is your purpose of being here today? What are some things you want to gain from this discussion? Let's kick it off. Lynn, please. I'm calling you first.
Of course you are. I guess I was chewing. Sorry. I like to get some insight on, what the latest maintenance tips and tricks kind of are, how you, I'm really interested in maintenance manuals and stuff like that. I know you're going to cover that in January, which I was excited to see. But, just hearing from everybody and just seeing what's going on, what the latest stuff is, really.
Okay, so looking for some of the trends and some best practices. That's good. Okay, and that's what we're here for. I see. Is it Addie? Am I saying that correctly? For Shia.
Amy DeFriscia.
Amy.
Sorry.
Amy. Sorry.
So
I'm just seeing the name on it.
Right. So we're in Ohio, and I've asked our entire maintenance staff, parks maintenance staff here, just like you said, it is important. We can focus on that list of things to do, right? And I'm probably worse at that than anybody, but anyway, plowing through and get the next thing done and the next thing done and the next thing done. And I want our staff to feel their importance.
Okay. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Some other folks. I see Jay Chestnut. I can see you, so that I can see a lot of people's faces now. So I'm going to start calling people out.
I'm basically here just to kind of what you said, to hear what everybody else has to say. Obviously, we're going through the staffing problem, not having enough, and how we can cover all the ground we have with limited people. So for the most part, when it comes to that, what I started doing is getting the ground to work for us as far as creating no-mow zones. But if there's anything else out there, like I don't know, maybe what you have going on. Like to
Okay,
hear.
great. So you're looking for some efficiency opportunities, maybe the way you're doing the work that you're doing, the getting out of that same old, same old.
Correct.
Great. Great. That's great to hear. Ryan, I see you're standing out on the field. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
No, not on the field, just the background. But no, I'm here because from our point of view, we're previously a practitioner, right, in a very large system, and now on the consulting side. So we see, probably about 60 or so, park systems a year, here in Ohio, in the Midwest, and just, if there's something of value that we can talk about, with the efficiency thing and, some of the challenges and tribulations that we've seen folks go through and how to grow from those. I think it's been a interesting 2 years, right? So seeing the importance from COVID, like you said, and then, trying to build upon that, right? And use that as leverage and momentum to, continue to strengthen. But as folks have alluded to here, the labor challenges are afoot, and we've got to figure out how to deal with those. So we've, just got some ideas and stuff we can share, and, we just want to hear everybody else's, challenges and what they've got going on.
Great. Thank you. Gall, I know you reached out to me before we even had, you were kind of wondering, what is this all about? So what interested you in participating?
Yeah, I think for me, it's similar to what everyone else is saying. Curious about, I guess, what other people do, best practices out there. My background is from a significantly urban environment in New York City, and so park maintenance there, I think, is a different animal than what I see in what I like to call suburbia. And just kind of getting the conversation going. Similar to what the other man said about no mow zones. So try to push forward on reducing those from pushing the resource management, the sustainability, the environmental, all those different aspects. And there's a lot of, I think, initial pushback from it, from residents who say, well, it's always been that mode and mowed that way, and they think it's like their backyard where it's going to be a manicured lawn that's cut weekly, and that's just the way it's been for 20 years, and that's where it'll be forever. But what I find is that talking to those residents one-on-one and having those conversations goes a long way to sort of showing them that we're not being lazy. We're not just kind of making excuses, but there's a rationale behind it. Some of these conversations have literally taken a half hour, but they've, I think, ended on good terms. One woman said, despite her wanting it to be a freshly manicured lawn, the way it's been, she also said that she grew up on a farm, so she appreciated where I was coming from and explaining it to her. And I think that's where it really goes. Everyone wants to know information and a justification, a rationale for why we're doing what we're doing. For me, going back to why I'm here, it's really understanding park maintenance on I guess on the municipal level in a smaller town and not an urban environment. And for me, it's certainly decentralized, particularly where I'm at in Middletown, New Jersey. And then trying to deal with the trash management, which seems to eat up so much of your time. And how do people handle trash? I think the ideal world would be make everything carry in, carry out, but that takes a lot of buy-in. And from my experience here, there's a lot of finger pointing with respect to the leagues, blaming it on pickup games, blaming it on the residents, blaming it on the leagues, and that was kind of my experience. I worked in Central Park as well, where you'd have the dog walkers blaming the bikers, blaming the nannies, blaming the runners, and everybody felt that the park was there for them. And I think it was our role to sort of sit there in between and take it all in and just try to nod our head and let them vent and then try to address the issues. But I think for me, the biggest issue is trash.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to launch a poll here because not everybody may have the capability to unmute, but we are in a meeting format here. This is not a webinar, so anyone can unmute, anyone can share your camera. I am going to launch this poll that's going to kind of say, what were some of your operational priorities this year? What were some of the things you were trying to focus on, either whether you're trying to improve them or it's something you always focus on? But I threw a list here. I just kind of threw some ideas out, but you bring up some very good points that I had on my list. In a sense, there's three main points I'm hearing there. Is one, we have stakeholder management. And so that's something that is a challenge, not for only operationally, but that should even be a uniform message from the top down. And so that may be one of the challenges we really run into is, people take ownership for different things, and there's not a unified approach or message that can come along with what is our priority, what is mine, right? And then that also ends up kind of, especially in urban settings, moving into suburbia, what is that sense of place? Are you feeling welcome, or are you creating a welcome atmosphere through what you're doing? Or are you in some way hindering that welcomeness because of our operations, our legislation, our policies? Are we creating barriers for the sake of having barriers? And then, of course, money and time. Those are some of those resource aspects. So, maybe that is the common denominator across all of our stakeholder groups, is people appreciate money and time. And so maybe that's that common interest points that we can share with, in a sense. I can appreciate when someone wastes my time, and I can appreciate doing something for the sake of, well, I do this because I'm supposed to do this, but it's actually a waste of time. And so when we have those honest conversations with the different kinds of stakeholders, whether it be the ones that want the manicured grass versus the meadows, or whether it be those environmentalists that say, I never leave trash, but they always do. But meanwhile, they also don't take the ownership to pick it up and put it in the bin that's right there. So those are some things that are hard conversations to have. But I guess, in my opinion, we need to create that sense of place, sense of belonging, sense of our community ownership. So that way everybody has some skin in the game. Otherwise, it is easy to just point fingers. It's always somebody else doing it, not us. It's that deferred responsibility, psychological stuff that happens, even within our own crews. Oh, that's not my task. I don't do that. That's the danger of the union mindset can creep in too. So I guess, where do we start on this? I'm seeing a lot of focus on capital replacement and asset management. And so that's a very big buzz, and that's something I'm really diving into a lot more next year. I had the fortune of going to the American Public Works Association conference down in Charlotte this past year, and I presented down there, and everything was asset management, capital improvement planning, and it is the future, because people are realizing people want data, justification for your budgets. And that we are in an industry where we tend to be the bottom of the pecking order unless we are able to justify and start leaning into some of the other language. And if we use this kind of mindset of community infrastructure for our assets, and we talk about things as assets, and we talk about things as investment, community investment, now it's not just a playground. Now it's not just a bathroom. Now it's something bigger that we can have a larger conversation around, and you get more players in the game. Unfortunately, I have the opportunity to see some of the goods and the bads. Well, I guess that is fortunately, but the unfortunate thing I see is that it is a very consume mindset, especially for things like playgrounds and ball fields, and even benches and trash bins and those kind of. It's okay, yeah, we'll just buy a new one. We'll just get another. We'll just get a grant and get that replaced. It's not looked at as, well, we just spent $250,000 on this playground, and it has a lifespan, and so therefore, to make it last, the full lifespan, there are some things that we need to do. When you have that ribbon cutting, that's only the starting point. Now it gets handed over to your crews, and you have to take the rest of it with you. So there's that mindset kind of aspect. That is there ways that some of you folks may have found some of the language or some of that kind of ways of maybe directing the conversation or managing up, if you will, has people found some success doing that? Monica, I saw you unmute. I'm going to put you on the spot.
We have found some success. We do have a maintenance staff that is very old school, and maintenance was not a priority. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in January, so I don't want to go too far into the weeds. But we were very reactive in the past, and the narrative with myself and the higher ups has to be asset management. And I think one of the reasons I'm here today, and I'm really interested in your school as a whole, BK, is to be able to hear other points of view from the bottom up. We developed our maintenance manual. Our maintenance staff had a big part of it, but also I had to get their buy-in and sell it to them just as much, because I know that there are people who are on the maintenance end of things more, and then you'll have people who are more decision makers in this group here today. I think not only is the situation have to come from the bottom up, but also the bottom has to have buy-in. So we can talk asset management, but sometimes your maintenance staff just don't want to hear about asset management. And, they want to be heard just as much, and they want to feel a lot of buy-in. We did have a lot of success with our staff, but we also had to change our language to them too, and hear what they want to hear and hear what their issues and concerns are. And we address their concerns, and we act as a funnel for information to the higher ups.
So maybe throw some examples out there. What is some of the needs, or what are some of those priorities that you're hearing, not from the admin, but from the line staff? What are they wanting? Waste, right? So we're talking about waste management, and we had been going over a recycle plan as part of CAPRA accreditation. We are a municipality of about 35,000. And we started including maintenance staff in the discussion of potential recycle plans, and how would we navigate that, and what would it be like to implement a recycle plan. And the more we talked about it, the more we struggled with the idea of implementation of a full recycle plan with the manpower we have. With a lot of discussion with our maintenance staff and with our environmental advisory board, this took over a year of different type of implementation plan until we did decide, from the board to the park board to the board of supervisors to the maintenance staff, that a zero waste implementation plan is the way to go. So actually we're in 2023 implementing what we're calling the pathway to zero waste, because we know it's not going to happen overnight. We don't feel like we could make a zero waste plan, but we are slowly but surely removing waste bins from park to park based on their usage, and an education plan. My maintenance staff is so excited. and I understand why, because this monopolized a lot of their time, and they have skills that are much higher level than waste removal. And I think they'd like to be able to take part in other maintenance priorities, rather than spend all of their time removing waste. So by listening to the staff while developing a recycle plan, our recycle plan shifted gears completely it took a complete 180 from initially a recycle plan to this pathway to zero waste, where we were able to really listen and hear what they were saying. But when I first heard of carry in, carry out as an admin, I thought, what are we getting into? My reaction was, what are we getting into? And I didn't think the guys would have that type of reaction, but by listening to them,
we really came up with this good plan. I feel very comfortable with it, and I'm the community now is excited. I don't know how excited they are when they see what's happening, but overall, the community is excited about this pathway to zero waste.
Well, and when you really think of it on the strategic level, managing waste is probably the best way to manage waste if you really think about it. Because what is the one task that your operations have to do year round, no matter what the weather is? Trash, managing waste. You don't have to mow all year round. Well, depending on where you live, but usually you don't have to mow year round. There will be some sort of dormant period. Trash never goes away, and people always bring it with them. So yes, that is a fantastic way. Now, another one, you did mention some meadows. Some folks here, like maybe even Ryan can help jump in here. I know, Ryan, you're more on the sports turf side of things, but I know on the sports side, there has been some real efforts on the brims around fields, the surrounding areas that lead to and creating different kind of stormwater controls and things because of aspects of whether it be synthetic or natural turf. It does create stormwater aspects. So what are some of the things that people can kind of look at or lean into right now in those aspects of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's those setting those expectations, and as the gentleman said before about having those conversations up front. So on the existing side, a lot of what we're seeing is telling that story about why it's important not to mow, right? You don't want people to think that, because ultimately the public thinks that, well, you're just being lazy, right? And it's not a function of labor, or it's a function of environmental concern or something like that. So we're always counseling folks, hey, let's talk about what we can put in here that would be beneficial, both from an environmental and a lessening the impact, right, on that front, while also helping out with labor. So if you lead with that environmental piece, and we talk about pollinator gardens, and we talk about bioswales, riparian areas, things like that, right, that we can create those spaces and offset some maintenance costs, that's a huge win, I think, in anybody's book. But it kind of goes to the asset management piece a little bit too. On the design side is a lot of the folks that had park maintenance manuals that were developed even 5 or 10 years ago, just that short time ago, some of that stuff is no longer relevant, because we don't have the seasonal staff maybe to support it, or we don't have the full-time staff even to support it. So it's really thinking about the areas like you just talked about from the design standpoint. And if you can get out in front of that and get your maintenance staff to talk about areas that they're feeling pain right now, and as you develop new park spaces or consider that, it's putting those areas in on the front end, right? And that's hugely beneficial, and we're seeing a ton of buy-in there. Even some areas too, and like you said with the stormwater management, you'd be surprised. Start talking about bioswales, rain gardens, things like that. Those things, they don't look like it, but they cost a lot of money. And when it comes down to project budgets, we see people, kind of wincing a little bit at those cost centers within a project. And when you explain the value, right, that, hey, not only is this an investment, right, in the environmental impact or lessening that thereof at this park, but also this is an investment in maintenance that, it might save you $5,000-$10,000 a year, something like that, in terms of labor and fuel, all that stuff to take care of it. But that's going to compound over time, right? Because those resources are only going to get more expensive, right? And you're still not going to have to manage this area as intensely as you would have, if you left it as natural grass or something like that. So it's an interesting question, right, about how to incorporate these into existing areas and also into new spaces, and what do we do? And I think that's where it's got to start to be at the forefront of our mind, from design and then from retrofitting. How can we lead with the benefits, right, and not necessarily our own benefits? That's something you kind of keep close to the vest, unless it turns into a budget meeting, which sometimes they do. So
can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. Maybe if you get a little closer.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, so kind of exactly what he's speaking about. I'm here in Greenville, South Carolina, and we just opened a brand new park on May 19th. And the whole idea of it was stormwater control, sustainability. We have a river running through the park, not a very big river, but it's the Reedy River. And for years and years, any river bench that we would have in throughout our parks would get clear cut. And the big part of this park was we have almost a mile of riverbank that is meadow grasses and pollinator mixes. And we're about a year into actually maintaining it. Of course, the park was opening in phases, so we've been maintaining for a year now. And the upfront work of getting the invasive things out, the woodies out, really keeping a hold on those types of things has really made a difference in how it looks to the public and to administration, city council. Again, they don't understand the reason behind it. They just see a mess. And so we've been working with local groups, volunteers, hands-on. We have a group, Hands on Greenville, United Way puts that on, and working with local Friends of the Reedy River to do a lot of hands-on maintenance on pulling those items out to make sure that we are successful. With it being a mile of meadow type plants, it is a struggle for staffing to keep up with that. So we've had about 6 volunteer groups, and we've been able to keep a hold on it. But also with the bioswales, we have a parking lot that's got 3 bioswales in it. And perfect day today, we had 4 inches, I think 4 inches of rain last night. And this specific area used to be, all the roads, surrounding roads would be closed down, and we didn't have to close a single road. They did river restoration and widened it and created a bench type effect, so that if we get any deposit, it's got a place to go. And for us to get that amount of rain, no, we didn't have to shut down any roads, just some trails within the park. So those type of, it works, and it maintenance wise makes it much easier on us, safety wise. So pretty cool to see that in action.
Those are some great examples of showing the functionality and showing that, you know, this stuff is real. It's not just a pie in the sky kind of aspect. Now, I want to throw it out there, folks that may have gone into the green infrastructure or just rain gardens or going on that more natural landscaping, turf reduction side of things. Now, what are some of those important steps that you needed to take to get your crew on board? Like I'm thinking a lot of the aspects of things I'm finding, or the stories of the naysayers, is there's not a preparation process for the management stewards, whether it be your municipal crew, whether it be a park crew, whether it be, you know, private land. You're gaining more and more and more, and then all of a sudden we're putting more specialized kind of skills. Now all of a sudden we have to recognize what an invasive is. Now we have to recognize what the types of plants are in our palette, because otherwise you just spent probably $1.50 or so per acre for a seed stock that somebody's just going to go and mow down because they don't know what it is. You know, so what are some of those either lessons learned or some of those steps that you took to get people ready to manage these things, to have positive outcomes?
For me, again, I involved staff early on. We got into the project management and provided the plant sheets and allowed them time to research them. As a manager of this park, I'd never expect anyone to know everything. And so I'm upfront with them. I tell them my best information and do hands-on walkthroughs. And hey, this is my, not just my vision, but the vision of this area, how I think it may be best to approach this situation. And it's really, I was very fortunate to be able to choose some really good teammates and allow them to build their buy-in. It wasn't just go do this. It was, hey, I'm going to teach you the best way to make this job easier. And I'm going to give you the information and support you in what I need you to do. So it was just a lot of back end support from administration and just showing them I'm right here with you. I'm out here getting my hands dirty with you, and just allow them to buy into their park. You know, it's their park. They're maintaining it. They're proud of it.
Well, that's great. That's again going back to that point we had earlier, is having that ownership and that buy-in. We're hearing it over and over again. So if there's anything we're going to take away from this conversation is, you know, your people or your communities best. So there are certain things of best practices that it is very unique to your situation. But there are some other things out there, you know, some bigger picture kind of things that we can really draw from. And it's not necessarily pinpointing the specific ways to create that buy-in, but the lesson learned is you need that buy-in from the bottom up to really have success in this. Otherwise, it ends up being administrative orbiting. So one of the things I have written here on my list is technologies, you know, some opportunities to improve our efficiencies through technological advances, whether it be starting to tag everything in a GIS system, whether it be starting to even just break away from paper-based and start making spreadsheets, building capital replacement plans as we go along, building our maintenance management plans as we go along. What are some of the things that people have been doing and some of the tools that have really been helpful in your steps so far?
We have I guess a municipal database that we use called GovPilot. And that for me has been helpful as far as managing, I guess, workflow. I think like everything we're talking about, you need someone who's able to manage the information too. I think I've had experiences where you've been expected to go out with your daily task sheet and log all the garbage that you pick up and the time you spent going from one location to the next, and even the breakdown of the trash. You know, I think like whether it's glass or graffiti or trash or whatever. And I understand the goal about it is to collect it and manage it. But I think you need to, if you're going to go into that level of detail, you need to make sure that there's someone on the back end who is managing it. So you have consistency across the board and you're actually doing something with the information, or else everybody who's taking the time to try to enter that information is really just going to say, now it's one more task that I'm given and I don't know, and it doesn't go anywhere with it. I wanted to piggyback on that note with the previous conversation about all these sustainable or green landscapes, and it's the same thing. You can't take a guy who's been mowing grass, that's all he knows for 20 years, and all of a sudden like, okay, now I want you to manage this rain garden. I mean, that's a big learning curve for somebody, and you know, I think you need to find the right makeup of staff. And just like we ask the capital side to keep in mind the maintenance when they build something, it's the same thing. We can't all of a sudden here's your new rain garden to weed, where all they know is I know how to mow it down. If that's what you're looking for, beyond that, like I don't know what to tell you. It's all, you know, it's like grass or weed to me. And that goes back to, you know, the guy who's managing the playgrounds isn't the guy who's dragging the ball fields. Park maintenance really is a very wide range of skill sets, and I think you're not going to find someone who's able to transfer from one to the other all the time. So I think that goes a lot to staff development and finding opportunities to find the right staff or to give the right ones the right training.
that you brought up a really good point there. And I remember one of your first comments, Gall, was that, you wanted to kind of gain the differences between that urban setting, urban program, and the more, rural kind of aspect of and that may be one of the biggest things you have, is a point that you brought up, that you may have the benefit in a large urban program to be able to specialize and have that unique team with unique skill sets and unique abilities, and you may have budget to do that. Where I grew up, it was in a town of 900 people. The person that was public works was also the one that did the ball fields, was also the one that did the playgrounds, was also the one that was sitting there filling the potholes, and he might have had 2 high school kids that helped him in the summer. But other than that, he was the public works, parks, and whatever, facilities department. And so that's one of the, how do we get both of those situations on a semi-equal playing field? What are those aspects that we can put out there for the one guy in a truck that also the fleet can do? It is one little magical electronic tool going to do that? Probably not, but, is it a community like this that helps somebody do that? Maybe. And those are some of the things I'm kind of digging at right now.
BK, that is very interesting. When I was doing a lot of research, nationwide, we're Pennsylvania. We've been working with BK for some time. I have 1 staff member for every 125 acres of land I manage. So we manage about, and we also have an aquatics complex and a pool. So my maintenance staff is park and rec staff. We don't have public works. Well, we do have a public works, but they just don't assist parks and recreation. So, as you look at a private golf course, right? I have less staff than a very small 96-acre golf course. We can't give that kind of attention to the parks. And we have our guys, everybody can do carpentry, everybody can do a little bit of electric. About 4 of our guys can work on our pool. Everybody is spread very thin. So that is a huge difference between these big organizations. And then justifying expenses, getting these employees, getting more staff. Sometimes maintenance isn't as glamorous as spending money on a brand new park. So we have to get out of the mindset of being reactive and just managing versus being proactive and being equipped with the staff that we need to be able to support our needs.
And that goes back to that maintenance management plan and having your SOPs and kind of having those high level tools that help guide those day-to-days, that help really prioritize the tasks in that sense, because it is easy, especially if you're the heads down, I just mow kind of mindset. What does it take to get that individual now focused on, well, now not you're mowing all day. Now we're going to remember you were good at carpentry at one point, right? Okay, well, we're going to have you do that too now, or we're going to have you do that instead now. And so I guess breaking the same old, right? Have folks been shaking things up in their internal structures? Not everybody's union. So sometimes you have the ability to allow something like 410s or 312s, or looking at different kind of scheduling to get a different type of mentality in there, or creating shift work. Or has there been any kind of structure changes or process changes that you've been trying to help do some of the, because we don't always have the budget to monetize the benefits. So what are some of the non-monetary benefits we're trying to use, or to create some of that culture or generate some new retention? Or is everybody just 8 to 5 or 5 to 1, depending on where you're at?
We're offering specialized bonuses. So like if they're willing to go for a specialized course at a certain level, we have a list of courses that our team can take. Now we're union, our staff is union.
Okay.
So we're very limited in some of the benefits and, that we can and cannot offer. But that is one thing that we actually had written into the union contract last time around, is what they can receive bonus and how, how they can excel.
So a little bit more carrot,
yes,
if you
like
will.
a
Okay.
carrot. Yes. And let me tell you, I've never seen them so excited to take training. They're really volunteering because they know they can, be a higher pay grade or, that type of thing. So even with my small team, it has been a carrot for them.
That's great. Amy.
I would have our staff speak up if they'd like, but through the height of COVID, we tried a lot of different schedules, probably like everyone, we split up into work groups and then met at satellite locations other than our shop and worked out of different places. And I think we all did that, but we've returned back to our 7 to 3:30 schedule, Monday through Friday. And I don't know, I kind of liked getting in here at 6 and leaving at 2:30, but there's not much more of an adjustment than that
Right.
that we could make given the type of service that we're performing. I would just like to touch back a little bit to earlier comments, and I would say that I didn't really understand the importance of the word perpetuity until I started working in this field. And I think Galt kind of touched on it. You hope that those that are looking at, building future projects and have their eyes on what it is that they're going to be handing over to you, that they're not just designing those things and setting those things up for, what's on a list or at a desk, and that for the people that need to take care of it, that they can do it for the long run, not just the short term. That's a huge thing. We're faced with some future development and some new facilities coming our way, and it's important to have a seat at the table and be able, which we've talked about, through this whole thing. It's important to be there and have a voice.
On that point, I guess this is definitely an open question to anyone, in that, is that something that we need to assert ourselves into the situation, or is it something that we kind of, how do we get at that table? I guess some of us are lucky enough that we have a very supportive municipality or a very supportive administrative structure. Other of us may be fighting just to get the lights turned on a daily basis, so like, what are some of the approaches that folks use here to either weasel their way in or keep in good graces?
I think my staff who ask more questions of me, I try to include everybody in meetings and be supportive. But the more questions I'm asked, the more I feel like my maintenance staff want to know and want to be engaged. I feel like those staff that are willing to come to me get a lot more information or are able to speak up to me more often than not. Because sometimes me and my everyday get caught up in whatever. I'm willing to admit that, right? But my maintenance staff does check in with me, or I try to check in with them. But just being proactive. If you're proactive, you recognize that your admin are potentially just so busy. Being proactive and asking questions. I know there's a development coming up. Are there meetings? Can I be involved?
No, they can't hear you.
So proactivity, that's definitely what I like to hear. And that gets away from that punching the work order mindset that sometimes operations gets really sucked into. Other folks. some thoughts or things that you would like.
One thing that I did with our park was really for me was my first time really doing major project management. And I had to learn how to ask the right questions. And so with my staff, I have a weekly meeting with them and I share, this is what's going on. And oftentimes they'll immediately say, well, could we do this? Or could you suggest that they do this? And I then take that information back to the project management team and say, hey, this is what they suggested. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. We didn't think of it that way, because these people in project management they're engineers, or they don't know, for example, the contractor building our park had never built a park before, so they don't know the difference between this and that. And I think also that's a bigger picture, dealing with an external force, but you have to assert yourself and ask the dumb questions and make them explain it. And I've really gotten, again, ownership from my maintenance staff by involving them on-site meetings and delegating tasks that I could go do, but giving them purpose of I'm contributing to this project. And look, I spoke up and I talked to these people, allowing them to say, hey, instead of calling me and reporting this issue, go ahead and call the on-site contractor. You, as a supervisor, take that ownership of it. I don't know a whole lot about construction, and having staff that know more than me be involved has been a huge help. So that's another way I've done it. Is I'll tell you, the whole reason I got into the position I am is because I was the leading playground person at the time, and I heard that the playground was going to have wood, and I'm like, so I heard the playground was going to have wood, and immediately was brought into the project side of it, and I was able to catch a lot of things. So sometimes you just have to butt your head in and butt your nose in and just say, I'd rather do it than regret not doing it.
That's a fantastic point. I used to build ropes courses a long time ago, and getting into those conversations. Oh, the telephone company is going to be delivering the poles and donating. Are there creosote on there? Oh yeah, why not? What does that matter? Okay, so those are some of the great points too. A great example, from talking with folks, thinking of dog parks. There's this fantastic dog park design, and everybody had all these inputs and then all these little donation opportunities. And then the maintenance person said, you need a double entry fence on the side there. Why? That's not an access point. How am I going to mow the grass? Ding, so like these are things that, sometimes it does take that the realistic eye to be able to ask those hard questions, or the obvious questions that no one else asked yet. Because I've heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And so that's something we often run into. We have a few minutes here left. I want to look at the future. And so I'm going to throw my last poll up here. And so this is looking at what are the biggest things that you have on your plate, or some things that are kind of roadblocks for you next year. And this will help me in generating content and doing some further research and pulling together some resources for the community's good. Staff retention. And this is a more than one, so you can put as many on there. Hopefully not everybody puts 100%, because that won't help me. But staffing. So that was my last little piece before we finished off today. I'm interested in hearing, what are folks doing, one, for making sure that you're keeping your legacy knowledge? What methods or what processes do you do to make sure you're capturing your data, whether it be a tool, whether you be exit interviewing, whether you just ask, what is administrative orbiting? That's when people just talk around something and don't do anything. That's government. Anyways, I digress. What are some aspects or tools that you have been doing before people are retiring, or is that not a concern for you? There is a generational shift that is going to be happening over the next few years. I'm saying within the next 5. Some people are saying within the next 10. I guess it depends on if you paid off your mortgage or not. But anyways, what are you doing to make sure that as your experienced staff is stepping out the door, that one, they're not taking all of the internal knowledge with them, but also how are you onboarding new staff? What are some of the approaches you're doing to make sure there is a transition as opposed to a hard stop and a restart and reinventing the wheel every 20 years?
Something that I've done just to kind of set myself up for the long term is try to break the habit of just hiring anybody or getting a seasonal and our spots opens and having them fill that. It creates some short-term pain where you have some vacancies, but I think it's worth it in the long run when you hire the right person. And we've been fortunate that we've held out and gotten a couple of people who have specific backgrounds, whether in irrigation or things of that nature. As far as the institutional knowledge and sharing that, it's really trying to do a lot of finding opportunities for group projects. I think that helps break up the monotony of just cutting the grass all the time, but having people shadow one another for the various topics. And sometimes you have people that are, I guess, shy but they have a great deal of information, and it's really encouraging them to pull that out and make them feel comfortable about their background. I've got guys who went to vocational school for landscaping, but are kind of just sticking on mowing the grass, and really trying to get them to break out of that and give them opportunities and say, here's a horticulture bed. Do what you want. Well, not do what you want, but do what you think is best, and we'll talk about it. And don't worry if you mess up. Like taking away that pressure, and say, let's talk about it together. I think that allows them to build on what they showed a genuine interest in before even coming to work, as well as it shows them value as an employee.
That's a great point. I am noticing a big cultural shift in just the way that people do work. It's not necessarily that we have to stop ticking boxes, but we have to start being a little bit more creative on what boxes we're actually asking them to tick. And are those boxes a prescriptive recipe that we just want them to follow this, do it autonomously? Or is the box something that they have some ownership over how they tick that box? And so that the newer folks want to know the whys, but they also want to have that ability to kind of figure out their own way as they go along, more so than just tell me what to do, get it over with. That's my interpretation of what I have been seeing. And now it depends on your industry too. Some folks may have a different outlook on that, but that's good points. Any other thoughts? Got a couple minutes here.
I just think to piggyback on that, BK, in the offboarding process and onboarding process is this.
Please.
We've seen really good luck with folks that want to teach their role to somebody new, right? So finding somebody that's compatible, maybe personality wise or somewhat, on the foundational skills, and giving them and empowering them with that task of, helping, shape the next generation, that sort of thing. And some people will buy into that. Others are maybe not so keen on doing that. And in that case, that's where, we'll work with folks to, instead of, defining the process, right? let's start with the outcome, right? What does it need to look like, or how does it, what is it, when it's safe, or when it's functional, or when it's, aesthetically pleasing, right? Start with that outcome and then back the process up and maybe reinvent or reverse engineer that, so that, the next people that come on, and then you can involve those folks that have that institutional knowledge and pull out, like you were saying before, where are the underground utilities? Where are the, the private things that we don't know about, all those sort of things. And maybe just that exit interview becomes more of, hey, what's left undone? What's still, what could we accomplish if you had been here another 2 years, and all that kind of stuff. And you'll be surprised at how honest those folks will be when you get them in that neutral setting and just say, hey, just put it all on the table and let's talk about it. So, setting outcomes on one side, and if they're willing to, a lot of times, like I said, we'll see them want to have a say or leave their legacy behind, if you will, in doing that. So always an interesting process, but it's vital, absolutely vital.
And those are some great points, especially in the turf side of things. You definitely have that almost a guild kind of feel. There is that coaching and onboarding, and it's around that sport mentality. They definitely have and of course there's no hazing either, but
no, but no, but it's all parks, right? It's all, not just the sports stuff, that we see this in, but also, parks management and parks maintenance as well. That there's a ton of parallels, and we see it from all sides. So yeah, it's good points.
Well, I see we are at the end of our time. I want to be respectful for everyone's time. I really appreciate you investing the time to be here for this discussion. If you're not already interacting with me on LinkedIn, please find me. Please find the Institute. It's our main avenue of kind of getting our materials out there, trying to create more of a community and a culture. Also, get on our newsletter list. We have a monthly newsletter that we share various articles from sources, whether it be turf to playgrounds to the green infrastructure staff. I mix things up, and I just keep things going there. And please, I'm not going to be bashful. I need your subscriptions. So if you have the ability to help, please subscribe to the Institute. We have a knowledge base that we've been continuously building. And it helps me get to that level of self-support, so that my grant runs out in another 2 years. So I got to hit that at least 0 level to continue on beyond that. So I could really appreciate any support that you all can do. So please reach out, send me an email, call me. If you know my email signature, I have my mobile right number in there. So text me, whatever. I am open. I am here as a service to the community at large. Don't be afraid to reach out. You are not bothering me, because it helps me know what content is valuable to others out there. So again, thank you for your participation today. I'm BK, Director of the Park Maintenance Institute, and we hope to host you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.